So for today's video slash Q&A, I gathered some of the most commonly asked questions that I get on TikTok, and I thought I would answer them for you guys today. However, before we get into the video, I just want to thank everyone who supports and watches these videos, because in the future, I hope to make YouTube my main platform, and I want to start directing a lot of my efforts to the content on this channel. Anyways, I think it's about time I answer these questions, so let's get to it. So I actually get this question quite often, especially when I'm live streaming on TikTok or on Instagram. There's always someone that will pop in the chat and be like, hey, you got any advice for beginners? You know, any tips or tricks? And over answering like 1,000 of those questions, it boiled down to just one answer. And that one answer is actually another question. I think this is important for really any artist, especially when they're starting out, really, I guess anything like this, which is to ask yourself, why are you doing it? What is your motivation for even creating art or drawing or whatever it is? The reason why that's an important question to ask is because it'll show you how much effort you're willing to put into your craft. How long are you going to be pursuing this hobby or whatever it is? It'll answer all those questions for you and if it's really worth your time. When I was on Instagram back in the early days of like 2014, 2016, I met a lot of artists that were my age at the time. A lot of those accounts I didn't see after a year, because they weren't doing it because it was a deep passion of theirs, more because they found an artist that they were impressed by and wanted to become that because they liked all that popularity. Look at how many likes they get, look how many followers. That'd be awesome if I could do that for my job, but they don't really think of like the actual thinking and the motivation and reasoning why they do it. When a beginner artist starts off because they just want more attention or whatever it is, their motivation dwindles a lot faster than the person that's just doing it for themselves. They want instant results right away. Drawing and creating art, you don't get instant results. It's 1,000 failed drawings before you get something that you're like, man, that's not too bad. I think that is one of the most important things to ask yourself before starting really any hobby. Or some people, they'll just act on an impulse, and maybe they're just super enamored by an aesthetic for a couple weeks, and then maybe it'll just drift away. This happened to me a lot, and I know a lot of people like this, where they just they pick up a hobby, drop it after 2 weeks, pick up another one, drop it, pick up another one, and I get that feeling. And I think that's part of the reason why you got to ask yourself these questions. Hopefully that was a decent response.
So I get asked on social media if I want to become a tattoo artist, or I'm just straight up told to become one every day. I mean, I don't have anything against tattoos or tattoo artists really, but it's not something that I'd like to pursue. I mean, sure, it would be fun to tattoo a few times, but I don't have plans to really turn it into a career. The main reason why is because the motivation for why I draw and kind of the foundation of my style is from the creative freedom I have to draw and illustrate whatever I want. Drawing gives me the opportunity to illustrate my thoughts, feelings, and more. If I was a tattoo artist or designed tattoos for people, I would be creating an idea that isn't really mine. However, taking commissions or depicting other people's ideas is a great way to improve as an artist, especially if you could see it as a creative challenge, and then get good enough where you could then realize people's ideas better than they could imagine it. That just isn't something that piques my interest, and it doesn't really itch that need I have to make art at the end of the day. It feels like extra work I have to do in order to get to what I actually want to do. Though if you are someone who wants a tattoo of my work, feel free to use any of my existing art for any tattoo that you desire. There have been a handful of people who have shared their tattoos they got of my art, and they turn out pretty awesome. The only thing I will warn you guys about is the shading style is changed from the original illustration in order to last longer, and it'll look better on skin because my work is generally tightly packed with tiny details that would kind of look like a blur if it was tattooed.
So probably the most commonly asked question is, what pen do I use? I really don't think it matters what pen you use, especially if you're just a beginner, because it doesn't really matter if you get the best equipment or the worst equipment. Your skill set and what up here is still very limited compared to someone who's been working at it for 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, even 1 year, even 6 months. For me, when I started back in 3rd grade, I started with just the pens I stole from school, and then from there I moved up to Sharpie fine liners. And then I remember I was in a comic book shop one day, and I was talking to the owner about how I love to draw superheroes, and he was like, oh, what pen do you use? And I was like, oh, I use Sharpie fine liners. And he's like, what? Those are complete shit. Get Micron pens. So, I went to the store and I got Micron pens. And then from there I heard about these Faber-Castell pens, which is what I use now. Now these babies, what makes them better than microns in my opinion is that the nibs are a lot more durable, they don't wear out as fast, and also there's a lot more life in them. The consistency of the quality with these pens are a lot better than microns. You know, I've seen my friend Ryan, like he's used microns in the past where, you know, just newly opened out of the package, he'd go to draw and all of a sudden the ink just explodes out of nowhere, and he did nothing wrong with it. And you know, this has happened multiple times as well, so that's why I don't trust microns as much. But this isn't the best pen in my opinion. I think that there's still a couple more that are, you know, tiers above, but for now I like to use these because they're pretty affordable. You could find them at Hobby Lobby, Michaels, Blick.com, but I think this is, you know, the best bang for your buck in my opinion. But that's not the only pen that I use. A lot of the times I'll get this question while I'm working with different pens. What pen do I use? I don't know if you guys have ever seen me draw on guitars, skateboards, or even on my door. Any of that stuff though, I use a different pen. Well, it's actually more of a paint marker. This is from the brand called Posca. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them. These are the best paint markers that you could get. I've tried a lot of off-brand paint markers in the past, and I could tell you that none of them really work. If you get a chance, definitely try out these Poscas because you could draw on literally any surface. But you know, these babies, sometimes you might realize, like, you might think that they're out of paint, but all you gotta do is you gotta just shake it, press down on it on a separate sheet of paper somewhere, and then it should be good to go. But if you do it like 3 more times and it still doesn't work, it's probably dead. But those are the main 2 that I use on a regular basis. Sometimes I will use a glass dip pen, or I'll use even a fountain pen. Unfortunately, my fountain pen broke. I'll get a new one soon though. There's like 1,000 different pens on the market, so you know, even though I use this pen, or I use that pen, or that artist used this, you know, try out different things. There's like 1,000 different pens out there. So, you know, don't limit yourself to just the ones that I told you or the ones that Kim Jong-ji told you or whoever it was. You know, definitely test out ones that you think would, you know, suit your style the best. But yeah, on to the next question. So I've had a lot of people ask me this question, which is, Cody, what is your style? What do you call your style? What is it? I have no clue. No idea. I've had a couple people say neo-surrealism, which kind of fits it. Seems like that's the closest answer to my style, but at the same time, there's a lot of different influences that kind of goes into the work I do. My style basically consists of everything that I've ever drawn before. There wasn't one set thing where I was like, okay, this is my style, let's run with this forever. I don't know, that kind of puts me in a box. I could go to my middle school drawings where I was doing a lot of superhero sketches, and I see a lot of that in my work today, and a lot of the anatomy and a lot of the guys, the giant people that I draw in my works. Pretty much anything with humans was all learned from my middle school years. And then all of my more abstract patterns that came from my early high school years when I was into Peter Draws and Mobius and all those kinds of people. And then now when you see a lot of the more childlike works like Forest of Imagination, that was inspired by Studio Ghibli, and a lot of those things that had a huge influence on me just last year. I guess my style is really just a combination of all these different mindscapes. I choose to depict them in many different ways. So I feel like the insight that I give into my own head and how it works kind of connects with people in a way where they're not able to express it, but they could see it with my own work. So I guess it makes sense that it is surrealism in a way, because it is a study of the unconscious, as I am pulling from a lot of these areas that I'm not really thinking about too much. I like to go into kind of a daydream mode sometimes where I'm just literally drawing while I'm daydreaming, and that kind of allows for me to pick apart some of those dreams and mental things that are going on in the back of my head. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Now, let's move to the next one. This next question is pretty interesting, which is, what is my goal with art? What's the ultimate goal? What's the end all be all? I guess my goal with art's kind of, it's stayed relatively the same in terms of like why I do it, which is because I really enjoy, I just love being in the moment and creating something, seeing something that spawns in my head and then bringing it into reality and then seeing how people react. That there is just a really rewarding system for me, and there's also other little reward systems inside that keep me going. But I guess the end goal for me, in terms of like the thing I want to accomplish that might be the biggest feat, is to direct an animated film. And I think the reason for that was, as of recently, you know, I got into Studio Ghibli in 2020. It was the first time I ever watched one, and it kind of sparked my old love for cell animation especially. Miyazaki's movies helped me remember my childhood imagination, and that, you know, has played a huge part into what my style is today. It's not as dark and as bleak as it was, really. Now it's kind of a mix between insanity and darkness and childhood and happiness, which is kind of fun. Another big ultimate goal of mine is actually something that I wrote about in my last semester of high school when I was talking about what I wanted to do for my career. I talked about how I wanted my art to kind of mean different things to different people. There's no one set meaning to any of my artwork. It's really up to your interpretation, and all of the meanings that people get from it, you know, comes from their own walk of life, and they all run equally as deep. And what's really cool about that is over the last year, I've gotten so many messages of people talking about just, you know, one piece I posted and what it means to that. That really warms my heart, because that's, you know, one of my big goals with any of my artwork really is to just provide not just one perspective, but many perspectives. And it's really up to how your imagination interprets it. That kind of leads you to whatever you believe it means. So I'm really happy that I'm able to do that and, you know, kind of have that complexity in my work, so people that kind of think on all different levels could, you know, come to their own conclusion on it, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. Hopefully I could bring that into the other avenues and genres and mediums of art that I want to do in the future. Anyways, thank you to everyone who stuck around until the end, because sometimes I have a hard time with that, as I find communicating through art to be a lot easier than communicating with words. But if you haven't already, consider supporting my work by checking out the link in my description to my web shop where we sell prints, apparel, and more. And if you don't have any money but you still want to support, consider leaving a like, sharing the video, leaving a comment, or subscribing, because that really does help my channel grow. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one.